All right, everybody, welcome to the Bulwark for this election eve live show. We are here joined by A.B. Stoddard with Saletan, Andrew Egger, and our fearless publisher, Sarah Longwell. Before we begin, I want to just talk a little bit about just setting the stage. First of all, you're seeing on the live stream right here. Nice hat, Sarah. You're seeing the live stream, a live feed of the Harris Walls rally. They are supposed to go on in Pittsburgh soon. That is the crowd in Pittsburgh. At the same time, we have Trump rallying in, I believe, in Pennsylvania somewhere. He's going to end up in East Lansing later tonight. There's a lot of stuff going on. Before we get talking about that, I wanted to just quickly say thanks, I think collectively from all of us, to the people who are tuning in tonight, our subscribers. Honestly, it's been a journey. I just recently joined, the newest member here. I couldn't be happier that I made this decision. This is one of the great communities in journalism. It is fueled by our subscribers, both literally and figuratively. You guys keep us sane. We love the conversations. It's why we do this. And we are eager to connect with you tonight through our comments feed. So if you have questions for us, we're going to try to get to them. But first, we're going to go through our people here and just sort of talk about where we feel it stands. And I guess how we feel sort of personally about the state of the race. So I'm going to start with Sarah. She is the publisher. We only have it for a little bit of time tonight. Sarah, done. More or less. I mean, obviously they got to go out tomorrow and vote, but like the campaigning is done tonight. How do you feel about the state right now?
Yeah, so I'll just say, part of what happens in this moment. So I've done this now a couple times. I did it in 2020. I did it in 2022. But I'm not just with the Bulwark. I'm also with my team that's been running Republican voters against Trump. And there's this moment where like you've spent all your money, you've run every ad you can. And Sam knows because he was in the office with us today. Then you just sit around and get punchy, right? And by punchy, I mean we're literally just like putting hands on each other, shoving each other around a little bit. We're looking at the crosstabs, we're looking at the aggregators, we're trying to aggregate the aggregators. None of it's useful, none of it's helpful. And look, we can sit here and do some analysis. I'm happy to do that, but like we don't know. We just don't know until this time tomorrow night. We will at least be somewhere. We'll have something to, whether it's in the early closing in North Carolina, in Florida, in Georgia. Basically what we're looking for is Kamala Harris overperforming the polling, right? Because we're trying to figure out, everybody knows, okay, it's close. We think it's close because the polling tells us it's close. That's the main thing we got. It's the only real data point. But, you're talking about vibes. It feels like Trump has closed really poorly. He is doing the lowest of low energy stuff right now. That Seltzer poll freaked him out. The same, then inverse proportion to how much it energized those of us who'd like to see him lose. But if we see, there is no chance for if nobody should ask me if she's going to win Florida. She's not going to win Florida.
Right.
Okay? Half the reason that she might be more competitive in some of the states that she's competitive in is because the people who love Trump from those states moved to Florida. Okay, so they're in Florida now, and they're going to vote for him in bigger numbers. But if it doesn't look as like big as we might think, and if North Carolina looks super close, and we're watching the suburbs close super hard for her, like tomorrow night at this time, we will have a glimpse of that, and we will know whether we are looking at Kamala Harris overperforming the polls or whether it looks about as tight as it's going to look. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can see Harris is taking the stage. At some point, we'll probably dip into her comments. We'll play those later on. But AB, I mean, what are you? Sarah kind of nailed this. What the general things we are going to be looking for to get a sense of how the night's going to go early on. Beyond the Xanax, what are you looking for tomorrow night?
So obviously, those are the hard numbers. Sarah's right. We know exactly what time we're going to see a state like Virginia, which is not a swing state, but it would tell us a lot if there started to be some slow up there. And then we're going to have Georgia coming in, which is a swing state. We're going to see, we're going to have a few states early enough in the night where we're not going to have final numbers, but we're going to see what she was just talking about. How is she doing in the suburbs? Is she overperforming the polls in key counties in those swing states,
Right.
Democratic counties, bellwether counties? We're going to really be able to get a sense. My feeling now is, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel like she's going to win. And I didn't 4 days ago. It's only been for the last 4 days.
AB, what turned you around?
Yeah.
Just the numbers so Jim Kessler, our friend at Third Way, tweeted out today, the gender gap remains 54.9 to 45.1 in the 7 swing states. The turnout gap is female plus 13 in Pennsylvania, female plus 12 in Georgia, female plus 11 in North Carolina, female plus 10 in Michigan, plus 7 in Wisconsin, plus 5 in Arizona, and 0 in Nevada. I mean, that's ball game. So if she does better with women than he does with men, she's president. And I just didn't see, I mean, the vibes were terrible. The polling was terrible. We weren't seeing this data from the early vote. And it's really encouraging. And obviously this Seltzer poll was an earthquake and a shot in the arm that showed us. And I really recommend everyone who's super junky in the waning hours has not yet listened to Tim Miller's conversation with Ann Seltzer from yesterday. Do so. He did an emergency pod with her. It's brief. You'll learn a lot. But she talks about how in District 1, they started to see that shift months ago. And then the presidential choice was lagging. But in District 1, the Democrats started to surge way ahead of the Republican incumbent. And you see the timeline in July over the summer of this very strict abortion ban taking place in Iowa, the number shifting in District 1, and then them shifting for Harris. And it just tells a story about women in selection. I've started.
It's kind of interesting you mention this because, and I don't want to say these are historical parallels, obviously completely different. I was talking with a Democrat today, and I'll kick it to you, Will, after this, because I'm curious for your thoughts on this. This Democrat's comparison was to 2004. And the reason he talked about that is that election took place in the wake of 9/11. Again, no one's comparing Dobbs to 9/11, but 9/11 just sort of shook the electorate in a way that it was going to define that race. And ultimately, it ended up pulling George W. Bush ahead in a race where John Kerry did look at times like he could actually unseat an incumbent. No historical parallel is exact. Everyone's comparing this to 2012, to 2020, to 2016. But Will, as our astute historian here, do you see any historical parallels? Does that analogy make any sense to you?
Well, my problem with the analogy is if I think about...
There's multiple problems with the analogy, but go ahead.
So, sorry, we've had 20, we have the last 2 elections, 2020 and 22. 20, we underestimated Trump. 22, we overestimated the red wave. We think Dobbs was the factor in 22, but this is going to be the first election where we both have post-Dobbs and Trump is on the ballot.
Right.
And so we don't know how those 2 factors are going to add up. So I'm not as optimistic about the Dobbs effect. I think it's there, but we're just going to have to see how many people Trump brings out of the woodwork who just didn't come out in 22. I can't believe I'm the Cassandra in this group, but
I am. Go ahead.
I mean, maybe you'll top me, Sam. I mean, my feeling about this election has been just like everybody else's here, except for one thing. That is, the vibes are great. She's doing everything right. He's doing everything wrong. Believe me, I watch everything Donald Trump does. He's trying so hard to lose. He's alienating everybody he can. He's totally screwing up his message. Everything his handlers tell him to do, he's not doing. And yet, I don't see enough in the numbers to reflect what I think should be the result of that. And to me, that's very ominous. That tells me I saw the Iowa poll. And honestly, AB, I would love to believe that translates, but I'm inclined to believe that it is abortion related. There's an abortion ballot measure there. There isn't in these other states, right? Abortion is an issue, but not the same way. So I'm not sure that's going to translate. And right after the Iowa poll came out, the Seltzer poll, next thing that came out was the Times Siena polls. And I just didn't see the effect that I thought I would see if what Seltzer was finding was nationalized. So I am worried that the numbers are not reflecting what the vibes do, and therefore there's an underlying phenomenon. And the most logical underlying phenomenon is this is a change election. People are very unhappy. And I know we at the Bulwark say the economy is better than people think, but they don't like it. The out party should win this race. And if Trump manages to lose it, that is a singular achievement. And I hope he succeeds.
Andrew, I'll go to you in a second, but I kind of want to hear what Sarah's reaction to that is.
Well, I do agree with Will about like the economy. People, well, the reason I was nodding vigorously is that me and JBL have this fight a lot where he's like, the economy is great. And I'm just like, at some point, I don't know how many focus groups I have to sit through listening to swing voters talk about how negatively they feel about the economy before he'll believe me that like for a lot of voters, it doesn't jive with like the macro environment. Like and like part of it is just like coming back from 9% inflation is really hard. And I also think it's really hard. Like even when inflation has gone down, like that's true. Like that on paper, numbers are down, lots of cooling. That's great. They cut interest rates, but like people will still tell you exactly how much their eggs used to cost and how much they cost now, how much their milk used to cost, how much it costs now. And I think that it is very hard for people in Washington to like be aware of how price sensitive people are, how much they feel that, how much more they interact with the notion of that price sensitivity than they do with, let's say, like a loftier notion like democracy.
Sure.
And so I'm agreeing with that. And I think the thing though that I guess has me shifted is like, I've now listened also to a lot of swing voters talk negatively about the economy and believe that Kamala, though, is the change person.
Let me just stop you there. Two things. One is, and this is perfect for Andrew, but one is inflation was a lot worse in 2022. Okay. It was 6% or so in 2022. And everyone assumed that was going to wipe out Democratic senators. It didn't. Something was going on. And that could be the Dobbs effect. And maybe it's negated by Trump on the ballot. Two is, and Andrew could speak to this, Trump made a tactical decision to stop advertising on the economy. He did. It's in the data. You can see it. His ads just started focusing on transgender surgeries and taxpayer funding for him. Like there's two of them, two prisoners in the world had transgender surgery operations. And the Trump campaign was like, we're going to put $20 million in ads on this thing. And that did open the door for Kamala to have make gains on the economy. Andrew, you wrote about this and you posed the question of whether she should have leaned in more aggressively. I'm kind of curious if you can talk about that and what you make of this dispute.
Yeah, so there is a real like kind of chicken and egg, or at least like a alternate history that you can roll out where you think, okay, what if Kamala Harris had come out and her surrogates had come out, and instead of leaning very hard on the kind of I feel your pain stuff, instead of just sort of buttering up all of the people in Sarah's focus groups and saying, but I promise we're going to deal with that. We're going to make it better. What if she had worked harder to, actually attack the assumption that the economy was bad? I mean, this is a thing that Joe Biden tried to do for almost a year, right? Like middle of last year was when they first rolled out the whole Bidenomics thing, because the economic indicators were starting to look up. We were coming out of, of the really high inflation, wage growth relative to inflation had gotten back on the right track. And so they basically made this decision. Okay, now's the time to really like start digging in and start like convincing Americans we're back, baby. Bidenomics worked. We got through the pandemic. We got through the supply shocks. We're back on the right track. And it just didn't work. It didn't take at all. And you can argue all night long about why that didn't take. And there's a bunch of reasonable reasons. And there's a bunch of reasons that have to do with, media diets and things like that. But one big reason is because Joe Biden was already at that point not the most effective messenger for his own reelection, right, for his own recovery. And so you can kind of question, well, okay, he ended up giving up on Bidenomics this spring, a few months before he ended up dropping out. He scrapped that whole strategy, and he himself pivoted very hard into I feel your pain mode. So again, yeah, you can kind of wonder, like, were Kamala Harris's hands tied? Did she kind of have to stay on that I feel your pain type strategy the whole time? But I should not make it sound as though the strategy that she has played has not paid some dividends in terms of the economic messaging, because we can look at the economy, we can say, look, I mean, wage growth relative to inflation is strong, is up relative to before the pandemic. In the kind of the effects of inflation, at least when they're spread over the whole economy, have been wiped out by economic growth and a tight job market and all of this increased productivity and things like that. And Kamala Harris should be able to plant a flag and win on that issue. You know, if
Right.
in a just world, it'd be 75-25 or something. But so we're not in that world, but we are in a world where the Democrats were down, you know, very heavily on this issue. And she has now fought him near to a standstill, which, you know, maybe there was another path that would have done better, but maybe this was the smarter choice and at least has neutralized that issue against him going into tomorrow.
A few programming notes here. One is, it looks like in the brief time we've been talking, Kamala Harris has finished her rally in Pittsburgh and is done, clearly trying to get to Philadelphia for the final rally of the night. We could probably kill the feed of her rally until we get something else up there, Sebastian, if you want to do that. Secondarily, folks who are tuning in, encourage you to submit some questions in our chat. We want to hear from you. We want to address them. You have us for a bit. We'll do our best to get to them, but please do use the chat function to pose some questions to us. Okay, let's switch sides a little bit. Actually, before we switch sides, I'm kind of curious, sticking with Harris, does anyone here feel like there was a tactical mistake beyond what Andrew was talking about that she made during her very brief 100 days as a candidate? Something that they look back and they wish she should have done different. I can see Sarah's perking up already. I have a feeling I know what Sarah's going to say, but go ahead, Sarah.
I mean, look, I will shut up really hard if she crushes tomorrow night with Tim Walz, but if she loses Pennsylvania, you guys are never going to hear the end of my Josh Shapiro shit.
Isn't the literature show that there's not really a home state effect for the VP?
Yeah,
though?
did you see Chris Cizilla get roasted on this?
Saliza.
Whatever. So he makes this point. He does this thing because he's been I don't know, very anti-ish this cycle, and he's been, you know, so he was clowning her for not taking Shapiro, like, it was obvious, and somebody reposted his article in which he was making the case that
no
vice president never does this for the home state. First of all, I will say though, to me that is bonkers analysis. Tell me when the last time in a close election somebody had a vice president from a swing state that was their home state.
Joe Biden, Delaware. No.
Yeah, it's not Biden. It wasn't Cheney.
No.
Like the last one was Paul Ryan from Wisconsin.
Right.
Maybe. But like, then what's before that? It wasn't Tim Kaine. Like, I don't know. Anyway, my point is, I don't understand. They have to go very far back for this analysis.
Right.
And I don't know that it doesn't take like a political genius, I don't think, to say, take the very popular governor from the must-win state. But whatever, there was going to be other things. People don't want me to belabor this. I hope she wins Pennsylvania. My God, I hope she wins Pennsylvania.
We will never hear the end of it if she doesn't. Beyond the absence of Shapiro from the ticket, I don't know, maybe not distancing herself more quickly from Biden in a strategic way. I could throw that out there. I don't know, AB, what do you think?
I really thought they handled it well. I think she made a mistake on The View saying that she couldn't think of something that would be different. But the way that they leaned into thanking him and just showered him with love from minute one until like the convention, and the thank you Joe signs and the thank you Joe chants, and then it was like, we're done here for the spring through September and October. And
until he appears on a simulcast and calls people garbage. But other than that,
and look, I'm sorry. I mean, the Biden. I really have strong feelings that maybe I'll write about another time, because this hasn't been the time, about his team leaking about his pouting. You know, I'm sorry that his ego and his wife didn't. That they extended this embarrassing situation of him deciding to run again and waiting too long to get out, because really it's his ego and his wife, and it's a shame. And the fact that we got into this situation where at the end of the campaign he was upset that he wasn't campaigning, and there were people leaking that to the media, is nuts. As for your question, So I think she's handled it great. She should have had a better answer about how she would be different than him, but she had to hug him, and then she had to subtly distance, and I thought they did it well. My little, like, if I was the campaign manager thing, I know we've all been doing that from the sidelines, is on tariffs. I just think it's such a powerful gift that she had, and she never really found a way to explain to Americans what was going to happen what will happen under this tariff plan. And she tried to say it was the Trump sales tax, and people didn't really get it. And I felt like that was a great thing. If she should, like, he has charts at his rallies, she should have had charts at her rallies. I think tariffs was like a gimme, and she didn't really go there.
I'm going to switch up a little bit. Chris S. in the comment section asks for our take on the Tim Alberta Atlantic piece, which is about Trump. We're going to move to Trump for this portion of the conversation. Will, did you read the piece?
No, so I can't.
Oh,
I can't.
Man.
Sorry.
You should read it.
Yes, I could have answered the previous. I'm happy to talk about what we were just talking about.
We'll go back to Biden in a bit, but Andrew, you read the piece.
Well, okay. So you asked earlier, like how we're all feeling, like who we think, like who we think has the momentum and everything. Like I really do think there is a strong possibility that we look back not on the piece itself as like a swing moment in this election, but the dynamics that it describes internal to the Trump campaign as having been hugely pivotal if he loses. Because what that piece describes is a very, for Trump, disciplined campaign for about a year, and one that lasted very, very, very far, very long after, there have been efforts to impose discipline on Donald Trump before. Usually he kind of like, he tries to go along with them for a little while, and then he chafes, and then he explodes, and it's like worse than ever, right? But I mean, he got all the way through the Republican primary on kind of a glide path. He was beating Joe Biden on kind of a glide path with a big assist from Joe Biden. And then he gets into the race against Kamala Harris. And as Tim Alberta describes at length, he loses it. Like he starts to really, really doubt the idea that his advisors are giving him, that what he needs to do is stay relatively staid and conservative and run on his strengths, run on the issues. And he starts taking these insane haymakers, speculating about the fact that she's not black, doing the whole "they're eating the pets" stuff. I mean, you can go chapter and verse on all the loopy stuff that's happened. But the most interesting stuff in the Tim Alberta piece to me was the stuff at the end that shows not just that he is kind of chafing and becoming less disciplined and getting himself into more snits, but really the loss of trust between him and some of his top campaign strategists, and particularly his co-campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, who it was reported just a couple weeks ago in CNN, had liked and retweeted a bunch of anti-Trump stuff right after January 6th. And this had just gotten to Trump, just in the last few days. I know I'm getting really granular on this stuff. But I think it matters because what happens in the wake of this is he has already been kind of distrusting LaCivita, and then he really just kind of starts telling people this guy's dead to me, and then he comes out and has like the most insanely undisciplined week he's ever had.
Let's pause and talk about that week. Will and I kind of discussed a portion of it when we did our RFK YouTube. But like, it's been quite a week. Like, there's been who was it? I think Sarah said it's a bad close. I think bad is sort of an understatement. I haven't really seen something like this from a campaign. It's they threatened Michelle Obama. They're talking about shooting an assassin's bullet hitting the press corps. RFK's talking about getting fluoride out of the water. It's like something like
banning vaccines is on the table.
Banning vaccines is on the table. Maybe it's like,
and then there's like just the weird stuff. The like I actually think this is like stupid, sort of, but like his weird fellatio on the mic. Like
the thing was crazy. Yeah.
But here's just the main thing on this is the campaign. This campaign has been so much more disciplined, broadly speaking, than the 2016 campaign, and yet 2016 and 2020, those campaigns knew enough. In the last few weeks,
They shut him up.
shut this guy down. He's on a teleprompter. He does nothing else. Okay. And somehow this time, after running an incredibly disciplined campaign, wheels just come off. And I think that's Andrew's point, right? Is like, you can look back on that Alberta piece and be like, this is when Trump decided, I'm not listening to you all. I think you're ripping me off. Fuck you. I'm going to do my own thing. And now he's like, he's just off the rails. And I do think that when we see a late break of independence away from Trump and to Kamala Harris, which is, I think, what we're going to see, it's going to be in large part because people looked up at the end and went, what is he doing?
I don't want to overstate it. And Will, I'm curious if you think this, but like the Madison Square Garden rally seemed to be a touchstone moment in that respect. Like it felt like all the momentum was in his direction, and he's holding this sort of like valedictory, big mega rally at MSG. It's his home turf, the conquering hero coming back to the city. And then they put fucking Tony Hinchcliffe up there, and he tells brutally racist jokes. And it's just like, whoa, this is bad. Like, this is a showcase of the vitriol and racism. And I feel like that actually did, I mean, who knows what happens. So I felt like that actually did turn our perceptions of this last week. Will?
So I agree with Sarah about, and you, Sam, about late breaking independence. People who at the end are, I don't know which way to go. They look at what Trump's actually saying, and they're gonna just, we got Warnock up here.
We got Warnock.
I agree that those people are on balance going to move to Harris for all the reasons we've discussed. My only dispute is I just don't know how many of them there are and whether they're enough to overcome other factors. But on your question, Sam.
Yeah.
I think that, and so I haven't read Tim Alberta. I've just been watching everything I can of Donald Trump. And believe me, it's as crazy as you guys say. And it's not just one rally. It's one after another after another. It's exactly what you said. He is doing his own thing. I don't know about the losing faith in his advisors, but the guy is, people have to understand this. He is not simply a liar when he says he won the 2020 election. He is genuinely high on his own supply. And so he thinks he wins. He thinks he has this magic, that he has fantastic judgment. He is, as he says, a genius. It's in his genes to be brilliant. And so he goes with his instincts, and he hasn't yet accepted that they actually cost him an election. So this is his third time. He thinks he won twice. And this illusion that he is a genius and he makes all the right decisions is why he goes off with stuff that everybody else would look at and say, this is nuts. I mean, to take the simplest, the most elementary thing, you have a shot. Everyone's telling you, do an event with Nikki Haley. And what do? You go on Fox and Friends and absolutely trash Nikki Haley. I mean, you could not be stupider than that. So, yeah.
Well, welcome to Mark Caputo for
Hey,
a
Mark.
second.
I was brushing my hair. Hey, sorry
Brushing
about
his
that.
hair.
Is this thing on? You know?
He doesn't come on this pretty. He takes a little time to get going. Mark, we're actually talking about Trump, and Will brings up what we're talking about, sort of the close to the campaign.
Yep.
I guess Will brings up the sort of very obvious question is like, why did they not campaign with Nikki Haley? Like the simple tactical moves to like expand your coalition and win over more voters.
Expanding a coalition is for cucks. That's a cuck move, right?
How do the campaigns feel about how they've closed? Honestly,
kind of the way the campaign has gone. It's just erratically. It's just it's whatever comes out of the top of Trump's head. There's a Spanish phrase for it that's more crude, but the campaign was always built with the idea there was the campaign and there was the candidates, and sometimes the twain would meet. And toward the end of a campaign, everything's inertia at that point. You put your ground game in to the degree it exists in the Trump campaign. There's a long discussion about that. You have your TV ads and all that stuff. And Donald Trump, goddammit, wants to do rallies, and he wants to do lots of rallies. And so he does rallies. And then he says whatever comes into his head whenever he wants. I guess the overall kind of mood in the campaign is like, I mean, they're projecting hyper confidence. They have data that shows it. I just wonder if the data is wrong.
Yeah. Well, look, I know, Sarah, you got to go in a little bit, but I kind of want to get your final thoughts, combining a few questions in here. One of them is, first of all, do you think how big a crossover a vote she'll get from Republicans and Republican women. And the other question that's popped up is, are there any blue state vulnerabilities for her? Or are we really just looking at a 7-state battleground here?
I mean, I think she could get as high as 10% of Republican crossover, especially in states like Pennsylvania. I don't know. I don't think that everywhere. I don't think that'll be the national number, but I think in states like Pennsylvania, which one of the reasons that, there are a lot of college educated voters in the collar counties. And I think that's where she's going to, blow people out. As far as blue state vulnerabilities, I don't believe New Hampshire at all. That's the one they've sort of put out there. I don't believe Virginia at all. I do think Virginia is moving slightly to the right and can, in the future, elect Youngkinish candidates with with some regularity. But I don't think it would elect Donald Trump outright. I mean, not even like, I don't think at all. So where else? I mean, it depends on also what you call a blue state. I mean, one of the states that I've been the most surprised how poorly she's doing in is Arizona. And that's just been this like kind of mystery to me the whole time. I mean, and I guess mystery in the sense people are telling me in the focus groups when I do Arizona focus groups that, immigration's a big deal to them. Their housing prices have gone up a lot there out west. Nevada says the same thing. Like people are feeling really priced out on houses. I think there's a lot of influx from California into some of these other states that are driving prices up, that are causing unique conditions out there. Also, the slide with Hispanics can be hurting her because there's a lot of Hispanics in those states. So like Nevada, which gives Democrats a heart attack every cycle, and then eventually like the Reid machine kind of pulls it out for them. I just think that's a place where she could be like, we could finally see that tip potentially. When I was out there, I did those focus groups in person, and people were in a gnarly place out there on the economy, like especially the border and the economy. And one last thing about Arizona. I have long been like, but Carrie Lake's such a bad candidate, and there's going to be an abortion ballot initiative. But those abortion ballot initiatives, I'll just say to people, they cut two different ways. What it allows people to do is sometimes it can drive turnout. So that's a real opportunity, especially for young voters, but it can also allow our voters, these crossover voters, to disaggregate their votes, right? So your moderates, but they're Republicans, but they're moderates. So they're pro-choice. They can go vote their pro-choice conscience on a ballot initiative, protect choice in their states. And that frees them up to vote for Trump and Republicans in a place like Arizona. And so I'm not sure it helps her there.
Interesting.
So anyway, those are the places that I'm worried about, and I'm watching tomorrow.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, no, I hadn't really thought about that either.
Kicked a leg out from under me.
Moral licensing to go and vote for Trump because you've
that's the Florida story. I mean, we frequently elect right-wing politicians, and then we vote like Abby Hoffman when it comes to our constitutional amendments, right? Like
minimum wage increases. Yeah,
yep.
That's right.
Medical marijuana, although we're probably going to reject, albeit with the majority vote, it takes 60% to approve a constitutional amendment in Florida. Probably going to fail on the legalization of marijuana here. It's a guess. And I'm not sure the abortion amendment's going to pass either.
Sarah, do you have to go?
I do, if that's okay. You guys there's enough of you.
Any final thoughts, or are you good?
Here's what I was just going to say, because I want to say something to our subscribers quickly. We've been doing all these live shows this year, and it's been so much fun and so great to get out and meet people. And the number one thing that people say to us when they come up and talk to us afterwards, which is my favorite part always, is they always say something like, "You keep us sane." And I will tell you, though, you guys do the same thing for us, right? The best thing about building the Bulwark has been about building the community that is mutually sustaining. Like, believe me when I tell you it's mutually sustaining. And I can't wait to hang out with you guys tomorrow night, no matter which way it goes. And I saw a question very early on where it was like, okay, if Kamala wins, what happens to you guys? And I just want you guys to know, I sort of said this to the team earlier today, because sometimes, people might think that about the Bulwark. Are we just formed in opposition to Trump? And absolutely not. You may have noticed the problem is bigger than Trump. It extends to the upending of our politics, complete political realignment. No matter what happens tomorrow, there's a lot of, work to do. There's a lot that's still changing about the Republican Party. And so you guys are here to help. We've been growing like crazy this year. We're going to keep growing, and we're going to keep being here and doing this thing. So thanks to all of you though for making that possible, because you do.
You're here. Thank you,
See you
Sarah. I really
guys.
appreciate it. Take care. Mark,
Thanks,
you jumped in. Trump was probably done with his rally. He's his third of 4
no, he
rallies.
just finished. I don't think the human mind is capable of handling 1.5 Trump rallies. Like I did 2 today, and I'm just like, he's going to do 1 more. I don't know, man.
How is he? How the stamina? Even I will admit, I would not be able to do it. It seems insane to me, but you know,
It's just like,
how do you look?
I don't know. It's just like, he looked okay. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I put in my AirPods and I start doing house chores because like I do dishes, I organize shelves, I do the laundry, because otherwise if I'm listening to it on my computer, I just wind up drifting. I go to Twitter. I stop. It's just, you wind up in this just kind of strange hypnotic place that
Do you think
it's just kind of difficult to tell.
AB, do you think he's comparing the 3 Trump runs? I mean, what do you think is the main difference between this version of Trump versus 2020 and 2016?
It's so interesting to see him the last couple of days when he says like, "Oh, this is kind of sad. Like this, we're not going to be doing this anymore."
He's getting nostalgic.
He's older. He's what?
He's getting nostalgic.
Yeah, because he feels an end of the road feeling. I know that he lives in his own reality and he thinks he's going to win, but just sort of the hunt, whatever the conquest. Look, 2016, I to this day believe that he ran to get a Trump Tower in Moscow. He never intended to win. He intended to sit on Fox and Friends every morning during a Hillary Clinton presidency and just bash her into the ground for Vladimir Putin while he has his hotel in Moscow. But anyway, it didn't work out and he became president. And then he was president. And he was this really different cat in 2020. You know, he's got COVID on his shoulders, and he's the incumbent president and he can't lose, right? And he's, denigrating the post office and preparing for the steal and all that stuff. And it's just a different person now. Of course, he has real legal jeopardy on his shoulders if he loses. But I was interested to see Tim Alberta I listened to him on CNN an hour ago. And it sounded like since he wrapped up his piece, the piece went to bed and was published the end of the week, published Saturday. At the end of the piece, he says, some of them are not going to want to work for Trump if he wins in the administration. Like they've had it. Tonight, it seemed worse. And he basically said people who are around him now, it was clearly La Savita, but basically it was like, they're not going to be sad if he loses. And there's a real sense that, and Mark obviously knows about this, that there seems to be some kind of acceleration of the chaos and acceleration of the bad blood. And I have checked in with some normal non-MAGA Republicans, former members, people who really think there was a definite slide back to Madison Square Garden and what you're asking, Will, in the last kind of 10 days-ish. That something has gone, people are panicked now about his ability to win and how much he's alienated women. And there's just a real sense of like some kind of turbulence. It doesn't mean that it changes the outcome of the election tomorrow night. But I think like normal, sane Republicans are not happy about what's been going on the last 10 days. And it sounds like inside the campaign, there's a real problem.
I agree with everything. And yet I can't help but like watch the last couple of weeks and the quiet from the normal sane Republicans. I mean, I want to go to Will because we just talked about this, but maybe I'm naive, but when they start floating Bobby Kennedy for a top healthcare role, I mean, to me, that was just like, holy shit. Like if you're normal and you're sane, like it doesn't really matter what your affiliation is. This is a bad idea. Like, this is a bad idea. Like, and this is before the fluoride stuff. Like he's been talking about this for weeks. Okay. Told he was going to go wild on health. Said he was going to give him women's health. And yet we've heard nothing, crickets from people who know better. So Will, I mean, you can analyze the Republican psyche here, but also like can you talk a bit about just how we need to have Bobby Kennedy in that position? Like, what are we doing here?
Well, I mean, you and I agree about this, Sam. It's nuts, but I have such a hard time seeing how anything Bobby Kennedy does, and believe me, he's doing everything he can to sink Trump too, with all his blabbing about how he's going to control HHS, he's going to attack vaccines. Let's throw in fluoride. Let's throw the
The
kitchen.
fluoride tree was incredible. Like, that came out of nowhere.
Like,
I
you
wanna know
cut
if
a
they even knew it
deal.
was coming.
That came out of
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove. What are you talking about? That didn't come out
No,
of
like, did the campaign
precious
know-
bodily fluids.
Hold on. Did the campaign know that Kennedy was going to do that, or did they all sort of look at their phones and be like, "Wait a second, Bobby just said on January 20th we're going to get fluoride out of public water"? What the fuck?
My general understanding with those guys is like everyone is just allowed to operate in their own space, and this is what you get.
That's wild. We're just going to completely revamp public health policy based on RFK Jr.'s freaking tweet feed. We're going to react.
That played out in public a little bit too, right? Because you had the co-chair of the transition team get up on CNN and say, of course he's not going to be in a cabinet position. And then they interview RFK. He's like, I don't know. Trump said I was going to be in the White House. And then you get Trump up at the rally and he's like, yeah, RFK is going to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And by the way, I wrote
Yeah,
about
go
this. RFK was mad. RFK was really pissed off at Howard Letnick for daring to say that. Like, how dare you say that I, anti-vax guy with all these other views, am not qualified to lead HHS, which controls Medicaid and Medicare.
Oh my God. We're laughing because we're petrified, just to be clear for the viewers here. But go ahead.
Sam, the weird
My
thing
fault.
to me about this, I totally agree with all this stuff about RFK. I have a hard time seeing how anything RFK does, as nuts as it is going to hurt Donald Trump, when so much that Donald Trump himself has done and said has not hurt Donald Trump. Like, I think
it has hurt Donald Trump is the thing.
How?
Maybe
the reality is
a higher ceiling.
The reality is Donald Trump, especially when he first took office, he had an opportunity to really sort of kind of remake politics. He did to a degree by adding in that sort of blue collar populism, but he's done nothing to really grow his base and grow his poll numbers and just kind of reach out and reassure people. You asked the Haley question before. He didn't campaign with Haley because he just basically didn't want to. And so just kind of time and time again, when he has an opportunity to do things to drive an economic message. In June, I remember I texted one of the top people at the Trump campaign saying, true or false, Trump is one economic message away from putting this election away. And it was a top Republican who had mentioned this to me, a data person, and they didn't answer. And that's because, like, Donald Trump gets up at these rallies and just talks about crime and immigration and then whatever else comes in his mind. So I just don't see how that helps him. And if things don't help you in a campaign, they hurt you. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is basically playing mistake-free ball.
And yet it's this close. I know I completely agree. It's insane to me.
Yeah, but Mark's point is it could be 55-45 Trump.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that when I step back,
in many respects, I'm sorry to, but in many respects it should, because and I'm going to get attacked by people who like Kamala Harris for this, but I mean, the reality is she's a conventional politician. She flip-flops on everything. She doesn't seem like she really knows what she believes. These are all criticisms that the Biden campaign's own research in 2020 had found. She's easy to attack on a variety of fronts, and he's kind of marginally losing to it right now.
Sure. All right, Will, finish your thought. We keep it.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when I step back and ask, like, what is, why isn't she doing better? I think I need to, and I would encourage everybody to change your baseline. Change your baseline. For all kinds of reasons, she should be, the out party should be winning this election handily, and it is not. And it is a combination of Trump doing everything wrong, as Mark and you guys were describing, and she has done almost everything right. I think AB is right. The one thing, if you ask me to name something she hasn't done right, it was not being prepared for the Sonny Hostin's question about what's different. What would you do differently? And honestly, she tried to correct that in about, 5 minutes later or whatever, and it was too late. But other than that, she has been, and I would say, Mark, she's been a way better candidate than I expected based on her performance in 2019, 2020. She was, in 2019, 2020, the thing about Kamala Harris, she was terrible on defense, excellent on offense, prosecutor, could take anybody down. When she would just get tight. We still saw that in the Lester Holt interview. When was that? 2021, 22.
It was it was the first year of the administration. She was being pressed on her role as the
Yeah.
person who's handling the trio of countries in North and South America.
Right. And she's gotten much better. Her performance has been much better on defense. So I cannot fault her. And all I have to say is she's done well enough to make it this close. And if she wins, it is an absolutely heroic performance, in my opinion.
AB, you were nodding there. I think we're sort of in agreement on that. I mean, people do need to understand it's like, it wasn't, and I'm not trying to be an apologist or anything, but like 100 days ago, a president who was up for re-election said, I'm not going to run. And at that point, it could have gone truly haywire. Like, it could have gone off the rails. You could have had an incredible Democratic infighting. Obviously, she was the likely person to run in his place. But I think from taking it from that to this has been fairly remarkable. Of course, there are missteps along the way, but what do you think?
Well, I also want to just agree with Will about, the mountain she has to climb. This is an unpopular incumbent. She is the incumbent. The knock on her, which I think is a little bit naive, but it works with a lot of voters, and Republicans use it, which is she's had 4 years and she hasn't done it. And we all know vice presidents don't do anything. So that's not, to me, it's not fair. But incumbent and obviously inflation. Yes, she's drawn it to a tie on the economy in polling, which is remarkable to me that people are actually listening. They are so mad about prices. And we're in an environment politically where people only respond to negativity, to fear and anger, and not to, I have this wonderful white paper and all these plans and proposals, and if you'll just hang on, you'll get all these details. But people have taken it in. The numbers never would have moved had they not actually. It is incredible to me that she's managed to do that. I think it's really, really hard when these price hikes are the first most of us have ever experienced, and they feel permanent and they produce intense anxiety. And the incumbency, the inflation, and immigration are all headwinds for her. It's very, very difficult, and it's why Trump can easily win. So I just wanted to say, I'm not thinking she definitely has this in the bag. I'm just, the only reason I changed my mind from all doom to some optimism is the data involving females. I'm going to concur that she was such a disaster in 2019 that I'm not going to waste any time on it, but I agree that she has so far exceeded expectations for those of us who watch that closely. You can give credit to David Plouffe, you can give credit to Jen O'Malley Dillon, you can give credit to a lot of people, but Harris herself decided to listen to these people, and she has done something right in these 100 days. And her debate performance, the way she gives these speeches, the whole thinking about the way to present herself, to reject identity politics, the way that she carries herself and comports herself, where you can see it might be someone else's idea, but it's authentically her, has very much succeeded in my view.
I love the, I'm going to go to a comment on it, but the attack on her that the Trump people level that I really crack up about is how they're like, oh, she's giving the same speech. And it's like, yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
He's not doing the weave.
What are we
you got to do
about?
the weave, man.
I guess the weave is a form of artistry, but I don't
know. It's a form of bullshittery.
Yes, I was joking. That was
I want to talk. By the way, if I could depress you real quick, AB, is there's the Republican talking part. This is the Trump campaign talking. They're saying, well, when you're looking at those gender gaps, what they're not telling you is that in states like North Carolina, the share of male Democratic votes is disproportionately low, whereas the share of Republican male votes is high. And their argument is the reason you see such a gender gap overall is that male Harris voters are not showing up.
Okay,
so,
I don't want to get into the rabbit hole.
Mark, I knew
you were going to pull us there. I knew you were going to
killing
pull
us.
this.
Hey,
there.
she mentioned the gender.
Well,
We are
you know,
not. We are
we'll
not
see,
going to
and
go
we'll
down the rabbit
see.
hole of EV data.
All right,
I want to
I'm
talk.
done.
I want to go into the comment section. Blanche
Okay.
Axton brings up an interesting point. The magnitude of the pandemic memory loss continues to stagger me. I gotta say, it staggers me too.
I don't think
It's
it's a
like it
memory
hasn't.
loss.
My point is that the pandemic was 4 years ago. Everyone's like, "Oh, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Yes, I am better off than I was 4 years ago. I think we all are. Like, I mean, yes, we are definitely better off. Andrew, should Harris have been talking more about COVID? I mean, the only one who brings it up is Barack Obama. Like, he's literally the only one.
I don't. I look. I think it would have been hard to do, and I think like Ron DeSantis kind of tried to run this playbook in the primary, right? Like he was. There were a lot of reasons why Ron DeSantis did not win that primary, but one of the reasons was that he made his bones as a political operative on COVID. Republicans loved him during COVID. They loved all these stances on COVID, and by the time we got to late last year, early this year, people were ready to talk and think and vote about other stuff. And I think that like you could make the argument that you could make a basic kind of competency case against Donald Trump using COVID. But the thing is that they have been able to make that case using a lot of other stuff that has more current valence, right? It's a lot of the the military leaders who don't respect or trust him, who are kind of alarmed by how he would interface with other countries, the trade stuff. Right. It's his actions after the election. And so like, just because I think people hopefully correctly kind of assume, wow, that was a weird thing that happened to us all 4 years ago. And yeah, he didn't do a very good job, but like, it's not like we're expecting him to have to manage another pandemic. You can make the argument that.
Okay, hold on. First of all, let's pray there's not another pandemic. Historically, it's not going to happen 4 years after the last one.
Glad you said that, Sam. I thought you were pro-pandemic.
Yes, I'm not pro-pandemic, just to be clear. Chopin's Heart in the comments notes that it was revealed like a month ago that he sent tests to Vladimir Putin during the height of COVID. The Harris people never even touch that.
That's not true.
They did. No, they did.
Okay.
He got pretty riled up about it, and like the day of, and she was in a radio interview or something, and she used it like a couple of times.
She
absolutely drove this message about.
Did it not stick? Obviously didn't stick for me. Yeah. I don't know.
But I don't know. People
are just tired of talking about COVID.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the other thing is, it's like, maybe I'm wrong, but it's a pandemic. People die in pandemics. Pandemics affect the whole globe. Right. So uniquely blaming Donald Trump for the pandemic while he was held accountable in 2020, he acted like a lunatic, and people are like, fuck this. Like, we can't have this guy. But, it's over. And so I don't necessarily think it's amnesia as much as like, it was a pandemic. A bunch of people died. We lived. It's time to move on. That's just my guess.
Florida man, right here.
People come, people go. Nothing changes.
His handling of the pandemic, I mean, he's responsible for so many unnecessary deaths because he lied to us and he wouldn't let us have tests. And he told Bob Woodward on February 7th of 2020, before any of us were told that our lives were going to stop, because that was middle of March. He told him that he knew that it was lethal and airborne and everything else. He lied to us. And he let it spread to the point where it's uncontrollable. He on January 30th of 2020, he was already doing phone calls with Merck and people trying to get going on a vaccine. He knew exactly what was going on, and he let it spread. So there is a great argument against him on that.
But now he distances himself from the vaccine.
That's the craziest thing to me.
But Democrats are terrified about having to defend themselves on lockdowns, and they won't do it. And they're trying to win Nevada. Nevada did vote for Biden by a slight margin that year anyway. And the casinos recovered, but they were hit so hard on the service industries, the various ones there. And Democrats will never bring it up again.
I thoroughly agree. I'm sure I can get Mark to ride with me on this.
Concur.
Democrats do not want to remind people about all the stuff that they advocated, often correctly, but sometimes excessively, that it limited people's freedom, that put people, some people were out of business, the closing the schools, that, way too much of that, Masks were oversold as a preventative. Harsh restrictions on businesses. The DeSantis position of freedom was actually popular. So I don't think this is a winning issue for Democrats. And of course, the weird thing is, the Republicans can always say more people died of COVID under Biden than under Trump for reasons totally unrelated to competence.
It's true, but yeah.
I mean, everything AB said is true. Everything she said is true. I researched this whole year, 2020. Trump did everything to hide this, to lie about it. He handled it as badly as any president could have, and is probably responsible for like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths. But it's just a bad issue for Democrats to try to run on in terms of the contrast and their own liabilities.
Okay, quickly,
really briefly.
One second. I just wanted to tell people we're watching above. That is Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, speaking at rally in Phoenix. I just want people to know there's 6 or 7 simulcasted rallies happening now for Harris. She's en route to Philadelphia for her closing rally. Trump, I believe, is en route to, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, East Lansing, Michigan, for his closing rally.
I think so. I've lost track.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot. Earlier today, Harris crisscrossed the state. She did a little bit of GOTV on her own. She was with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, wooing the Puerto Rican vote in Pennsylvania. Trump was all over the place today, too. It's just a whirlwind. They're all trying to get in the last stops. Andrew, go ahead quickly.
Sorry, just one other thing on COVID that has been so staggering is the one thing that Trump definitely did right in the whole pandemic was Operation Warp Speed. He put a ton of money behind the idea that we were going to get these vaccines way faster than people thought we would, and it worked. It actually did accelerate the timetable. It helped. It got those vaccines out there. And now Trump has spent this entire year slowly backing away from that. Right at the beginning of the Republican primary, he was still saying it was great stuff, while Ron DeSantis was slagging on it. Now, today, he doesn't talk about it at all. And you have J.D. Vance on an interview over the weekend talking about how lame the COVID shots were and how he's like, it's like a sigh of regret.
He didn't even get high.
And RFK and the banning vaccines. I mean, like it has been really staggering. Those shots literally just yanked the whole nation out of the pandemic, slowed the deaths. Enormously, like miraculous thing that happened to all of us, and Trump isn't running on them, and Democrat. I mean, we really have memory.
Not only is he not running on them, he's appointing the guy who's like the chief vaccine skeptic to run health. So I'm going to do what's known as the Stein weave here. I'm going to go to a completely random topic. The other news that happened tonight is media news. Joe Rogan, podcaster extraordinaire, did say finally that he's endorsing Donald Trump. I guess the surprise is that he endorsed it all. He had said, he had spoken skeptically of Trump. Trump went on his show. He's endorsing Trump. Rogan is tight with Elon Musk. Look, I don't think we're like surprised at all, but it does sort of, it does bring back the question of media strategy for Trump. He's really hammered these podcasts, mostly bro podcasts, and it's kind of a novel way of doing presidential campaign media. Like, it's the first election in my memory where a candidate has been so heavily invested in podcast and live streaming, and it could work. I don't know, but Mark, tell us a little bit about sort of the campaign's insights into why they did this, and then we'll kick it around the horn to get takes on whether it's smart.
Boy, I mean, you explained it. This is, the Willie Sutton theory of robbing banks, right? That's where the money is.
That's where the money is.
This is where the voters are that they're looking for. I mean, the big problem that cost Trump the election, the big demographic group that fell off between 2016 and 2020 were white men. We talk about suburban housewives and all this, those white guys, hence the Vance pick. And Vance is a creature of Podcastville. And so these things kind of fit together very well. And I can't remember. I think in the first 19 hours, there were about 19 million views of the Joe Rogan podcast.
Wow.
And Trump for 2 years had been trying to get on that. And he stepped his way up. He did the Undertaker's podcast, the professional wrestling guy or the former professional wrestling guy, and a whole bunch of others. And, they believe that this has worked. One thing, I don't want to get in the early voting data too much, but.
Oh, God, here he goes again.
Well, they did. It's the only thing we have for turnout. They did say that they were going to try to remake the electorate, so to speak, and make it more young and male and infrequent voters. We're not seeing that. So while he did get a lot of press out of it and he did get a lot of talking time, I'm not sure it paid off. We're going to know tomorrow, maybe.
All right. To the commenters, Tony
That's
M
the
says,
point.
yeah. Tony M says, I still wish Harris had spent more time going for the bro vote. Should she have done these podcasts? She was supposed to do Rogan, or she was in talks with doing Rogan. AB, what do you think?
I don't think Harris was going to get the bro vote. I think
Probably not.
She needed to turn up her own voters, and she's done that.
Right.
She needs women with college degrees of every race, and then she needs to reach. I think she's effectively reached out to white non-college. Well, actually, women, non-college women of every race, also, in terms of her home care agenda. I mean, her care agenda, her opportunity economy stuff, and on abortion, reproductive freedom. So, what is interesting, Mark, is that there is no data. I mean, I'm going to trust Ron Brownstein. There's no bro vote showing up in the early vote. So they have to come out tomorrow, the bros. And so I think it was smart of Trump, but he was supposed to do, and all of the above strategy. And the energy that he has put into pissing off women is so epic. So you can get Joe Rogan and you can get all the pissed off white men you can, but they got to show up at the polls tomorrow, and they have to overcome the women that he sent packing.
You think
January 6th combination, whatever. And so I think it was a good plan, but it was supposed to be like, then he was supposed to go on The View too. And
I don't think they would have had him.
that would have been
Well,
they've been on it before, right?
I know. Wait, AB, you think that Trump telling women he'll be their protector whether they like it or not was a bad thing to
I'm sorry. I hope everyone with us tonight watched Saturday Night Live. The cold open with Harris was absolutely wonderful, and the Tim Kaine skit was hilarious. But when they had, I can't remember the guy's name who does Trump now on SNL.
James Austin Johnson.
Okay, Sam, did you? That was my favorite line of the whole year. When he goes, when they're famous, when you're famous, they let you protect them.
It was really good. I would highly recommend. Look at you dying over here. Oh my God! Hold on. We got to bring Sarah back. Josh Shapiro is talking, and we want to see Sarah.
Can I?
Well, go ahead.
I want to follow on the gender stuff for a minute. First of all, every woman who has ever been hit on is familiar with the wide spectrum of men who have no idea how to talk to a woman. So Donald Trump is just another one of these guys who, even at 78, has failed to learn anything about how to communicate things like respect. I think so. Look, I am a hardcore female supremacist, and I have learned this over the course of my life. There are two reasons why I think her strategy of betting on women is better than his strategy of betting on men. One is that women feel more a sense of urgency in this election because of Dobbs. Like there's something physical at stake for them in a way that there just isn't for men. The other thing is women are just better at follow through. Anyone in a marriage, I mean, it's not, I'm not commenting on everybody else's marriage, but like women get things done. They just do by and large. And so Trump has this riff. Trump has this riff. He's doing at his rallies for the last couple of weeks where he describes, he's talking to some imaginary woman who supports him and who says, tell your husband, Joe, get off the couch, you fat slob, get off the couch and get out there. And he keeps doing this thing over and over. And actually, I think it's a sensible thing to do because he knows that those guys are not going to get off the couch and go vote unless somebody in the House does. That's not a good position to be in politically when the person you need to vote is the person you want their spouse to tell them to do it. Whereas Kamala can just communicate with the women and she can count on the women to show up. I think that actually will end up bearing out in the data.
Not only saying show up, they're like actively saying, go behind your husband's back if he's a Trumper and like vote for me. It's like, we know you're showing up, but you just don't have to tell him who you're voting for. Andrew, Pat Dukes in the comments asks, why wasn't Trump's age more of an issue?
Well, it kind of was, right? I mean, like people are talking about it. We've been talking about it. The weird thing about Donald Trump is like he just doesn't seem like a normal guy, right? Like he has not necessarily like seemed to
He
look
isn't a
any
normal
older.
guy.
He seems to look more bronzed and more kind of like shrunken and drier, you know, like that's kind of the benefit of like this bizarre kind of like super odd brand that he's always had, right? Is like it's not like there are other younger Trumps to compare him to, right? And then obviously for the longest time, Biden was older and Biden was plainly decaying faster. Now, however, you know, I mean, it's certainly a thought that I've had more often within the last week than ever before on the trail when he does. I mean, all of the talk about the weave. This thing came out of nowhere, right? And Trump has these brain worms, and they exist for reasons, right? I mean, like the weave is not a thing that he came up with because he previously had no other way to pat himself on the back and call himself a genius. He came up with the weave because he was starting to do the Biden thing where he like would trail off, like go into random tangents and trail off and get distracted by stuff. And so he had to come up with this like thing to tell his supporters, actually it's good and smart and really high level that I'm doing this all the time because in 5 minutes I'm going to remember what I was talking about before. I'm going to mention it again. Boom, I landed it. That's the weave, baby. And like and it's been really like astonishing. I mean, Mark, you've been mainlining these rallies. I'm sure like you can speak to it, but I mean like different, worse than before. And yeah, like I think if people had been watching a ton of these rallies in 2020 and we're watching a ton of them now, you'd be able to be like, wow, yeah, he actually is less with it. But I mean, it took a totally melting debate performance for us to see it with Joe Biden. So maybe the Harris campaign just doesn't think that like he's quite at that level that they could make it the main thing in addition to like all the other outrageous stuff. So I don't know. That's my theory anyway.
Just a quick note, Sebastian, I flagged something for you in the chat. I want to, if we can pull it up. So what we're watching here is Shapiro. Geez, I mean, quite the setting. I have to be honest. Those are the Rocky steps, to be honest. And he just gave a speech. He's off. See you, Josh. Sorry, he couldn't have been VP.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you got Trump rallies. It's just him up there like open mic.
That's where I want Sebastian to pull up this tweet photo from Adam Wren. I don't know if he can do it. This is. I don't know if we can focus in on it. Wren, who an old colleague of mine from Politico. He's at the rally in Grand Rapids. He says, with nearly everyone inside Trump's final rally of the cycle, more than half of the upper bowl is barren here at the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids. I actually do not make too much of this. I think crowd size is a shitty metric. I will say it's interesting because Trump has used it as not just a metric of political enthusiasm, but almost like his manhood.
It's his lifeblood.
And the past week, the crowds have just been kind of barren a little bit relative to what they have been. What's going on? I mean, are people just tired of it? Or they've heard it before? Like, what's going on?
I think that's part of it. I mean, his rally just had at the very beginning, it looked from where I was watching, right? I wasn't there. Looked like a packed house, but he stretched on for 80 minutes, 90 minutes. You know, people are going to start to file out after 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah, but this is
like
the
human mind can't handle it. This hasn't started yet, but everyone knows what's going to happen. It's 10 o'clock now, our time. So, that's right. Michigan's also on Eastern time, right? So he's not going to probably show up and start speaking until 11. Right. Like, do you really want to go to that? And then you're going to listen to him for 90 minutes, tell these stories about how he saved the auto industry when he didn't. And, you know, one of the more interesting things I've found listening to the North Carolina speeches is his fascination with furniture. Like, because obviously North Carolina is where they do furniture manufacturing.
Yeah, he's talking about the furniture makers in like
but there was one anecdote. He was kind of talking about furniture in an almost romantic way, and it reminded me of you're talking about the grab her by the hoo-ha story he told back then. Remember, he was caught on hot mic talking about how he wanted to get with this woman, and he figured the way to get with this woman is to go take her to buy some furniture. Yes. I just think furniture is an interesting feature of Donald Trump's. But anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. That's the weave.
Very close to the Access Hollywood tape. The story is very similar. Yeah, I moved on her. Yeah, I took her out shopping. Yeah.
Mark, didn't you be president? That was great weaving.
you like how it weaves?
To me, what I love about that Republican criticism about how she repeats the same lines in her speeches
So
is that
crazy.
he repeats the same weaved out anecdotes that are full of BS and lies. And how, oh, I'm in Michigan. Did you guys know that they gave me a special award and I was man of the year? It's like the same bullshit is dumped.
All right, we got to
again.
place bets. He's going to Michigan. He's going to Michigan tonight. Does he tell the Michigan Man of the Year story tonight? I want bets. Will he tell the Michigan Man of the Year story at his last rally?
Yeah, he has.
He's in Michigan.
Yes.
He's got one.
No, he won't.
It's his favorite.
Oh, Will takes
No.
He's gonna tell the story of how he got John Deere to to not build a plant in Mexico.
That's
He's
a
definitely
classic.
gonna have that.
Yes.
Which John Deere
Absolutely.
just said is not true.
Yeah, of course.
That doesn't matter. That's fake news. What are you talking
And
about?
how the Mexicans are going to have it. And he just took one call with some Chinese leader, and he said 100% tariffs, and they called him right back, and suddenly the deal was done. And look at that.
He just reprised his
speeches. Yeah, it's like
he just reprised his idea of having the migrant UFC fights.
Oh, I saw that one.
Yeah, he's back on that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Sorry, man. Maybe come on back to the camera. Yeah, literally.
All right.
I was just man.
Let's weave this back into some sort of real conversation. How do we?
I ruined it.
How do we suspect tomorrow night goes? Assuming it's as close as we all anticipate. I think AB, you've written about this, like genuine fears of him going out there really early and saying, "I win," and that's it.
Okay, so JVL wrote today, and it's so true, that if he's feeling wobbly about the numbers, the data, whatever his staff is telling him, he's got to do that earlier. He's got to do it before anybody gets nervous and starts saying, whoa, 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 on his side. He needs to shut them down. They need to fall in line. They need to lie like he does and start freaking out about suitcases and vans and all sorts of things. And that's I hadn't thought of that, but JVL wrote about it today. It is so true. If he doesn't feel good, he's going to do it even earlier. And it's going to be a problem if he's not winning it outright. It's really going to be the potential for just mayhem is really, really high. We know that these people have been planning for this for 4 years. They have invested tremendous resources and energy into it, and they have been radicalized by this lie, and they believe it. And they are ready to stop certification or pressure the people who are responsible with certification. It's just going to rip through communities, and it's going to be a huge, huge problem unless
I think the difference now, and one of the things I think that overall sort of just benefits Harris and macro is Trump can win all of the Sun Belt swing states. He still needs to win one of the 3 Rust Belt swing states, and all 3 of those are controlled by the Democratic Party. They have more Democratic voters. They have a Democratic executive. So I do think it'll be a little different from 2020. I'm not saying there won't be shenanigans, but that I think that is a notable difference. There's also been various reforms.
I don't know. I'm nervous.
What are you nervous about?
Well, that he does exactly what JVL predicts, right? He goes out there, he says, "I win."
Oh, he's going to do that.
Yeah. And then suddenly, you have these poor election workers who are just absolutely harassed, just trying to do their basic civic duty. And I don't want to get too dramatic about it, but it's pretty dramatic, right? Like the thing that actually got me really nervous was the Stray story a week ago or so ago about the arson in the ballot drop box. Because to me, that was like, okay, it's these are such a decentralized election system. One little stray ballot box, ballots get burned. And what if that happens at a little bit more large scale? What if there's something disruptive tomorrow? What if in the counting process, one truly unhinged person does something to destroy ballots? And then suddenly everything is up in the air, and we're sort of like, well, what's legitimate now? And who gets to adjudicate that? And now, well, here we go. I don't know why. Will, are you not nervous? Because that would be insane to me.
Yeah, no, I I worry about that. I'm just having a hard time worrying about the scenario where Trump has actually lost the election and he's lying about it. Like that's bad. But my feeling about this, I mean, JVL is worked up about this, and my feeling is just win, baby. Be in a position where if the truth comes out, the truth is on your side, because there's a lot of scenarios where it's not on our side, where he actually wins. So I'm looking at this thing tomorrow. I'm looking at, I don't like where the early vote stands. I mean, look, Trump's been telling everybody go out and vote early, so it's not surprising that he's got good numbers there. But I'm entirely interested in, at the early part of the evening, looking at how much of looking for signs of how much the early vote on the Republican side has cannibalized votes that would otherwise go to them. And I look at those numbers from last time. Trump's right. He went from like 63 million to 75 million. It was an amazing performance. And 81 million people came out against him. Can Kamala, I assume she can top that, but what I am scared about is how much higher than 75 million he can go. How many more people, Elon and whoever, this is an unconventional strategy. Are there a bunch of, we've seen the Trump memo, right? The Trump campaign memo, rural turnout is significantly up, right? Mm-hmm. We could get swamped. We could totally get swamped. We've all seen the national polling. When you start digging into people who generally don't vote, it starts to move towards Trump. Though that's like a 12-point Trump advantage. If this electorate gets really big with a lot of ignorant people who like Trump's angry message, then we lose, and none of this matters about contesting the election. Then he's actually won and he's actually president.
Sure. Yes. And no one here thinks that Kamala Harris is going to say, actually, no, I won. Right. Like that. I've never crossed our minds. It does raise the question about Elon.
She should just do it. She should just like go for the vote. She should declare that she won at like 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I mean?
Okay.
If Kamala Harris has the courage.
Yeah. Mark, Will referenced Elon. It does seem like a lot's riding on his shoulders here for Trump.
Yeah.
If Trump fails, I think he'll be scapegoated for this ground game, which this is personal anecdotal stuff. Like, I know two people, two people who gives a shit, but two people who I know who went to canvass in Lancaster, Pennsylvania over the weekend for Harris. A swing county in Pennsylvania. It's Republican, but it's moving towards Democrats. They spent a whole day there. They did not once cross paths with the Trump canvasser. They only saw one piece of Trump lit on a door. Anecdotally, I've heard similar from other people in Pennsylvania, less so in Arizona, heard something similar in North Carolina. Like, I don't know, maybe Elon's got something going on and we don't know about it. Maybe this is just anecdotal. What are you hearing?
Well, I've always been skeptical about whether ground game really matters, right? Whether the door knocking really matters and all those things. That having been said, so according to Elon's people and the Trump campaign, is that the old way of doing things is knocking on doors. Now it's more sophisticated. You reach people on social media, you reach them by text message, and the like. So allegedly, that's what they're doing. I don't fully buy it, but I don't fully buy that there's absolutely nothing out there. Yeah, sure, maybe they could scapegoat Elon Musk, but everyone knows if Donald Trump loses, it's because he insisted on self-sabotaging and acting like a lunatic over and over and over and over.
Well, he won't. Yes, but he won't admit that. I think. He'll see a situation where he says Elon failed me, but
of course he could. Of course he will. But then again, Elon has those nice rockets that always fascinate him. So maybe he could just take him over to Canaveral and show him those, and Trump will be happy at seeing the big sights of those. But the reality is Musk is doing something. And they are spending a lot of money.
They are.
Wired magazine has done a few good pieces about these poor folks who have been sort of shanghaied into going to Michigan or whatever, and then kind of left on their own. So the
piece had people like literally in the back of U-Hauls.
Yeah, it's like the British, the way they would Shanghai people, right?
Yeah,
they like knock them over the head. They wake up in Shanghai, that kind of thing. Like they're in the Navy now. And the thing that the structural problem that Republicans have with ground game is Democrats over the years have actually built up a real volunteer base that they've maintained sort of contact with. The Republicans, it's corporate, it's big money, and they wind up hiring, quote, carnies, right? You wind up hiring people who don't have other jobs to do this sort of stuff. They're not committed to this stuff. They don't really know, and this is what you get.
Anyone want to jump off that? Andrew?
I didn't know they were hiring for that. That sounds kind of, Grand Rapids is nice this time of year. You guys could have done without me. I could have gone and knocked doors for Elon Musk.
That would have been a good undercover journalism assignment.
Yeah, I would have been wired to the scoop. That's for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Who was talking?
I was just going to say that, first of all, Elon Musk has proved that he knows how to work with objects, but not with people. Like, his management of Twitter is like an unmitigated disaster. So it's entirely possible that he
still on it.
Yeah. It's entirely possible that he will do for the Republican get out the vote what he did for Twitter, it'll be a complete debacle because he can't manage anything. And the other thing, of course, is this whole Shanghai operation just reminds us, what is the number one thing that happens when you outsource to like some private sector people you don't really know, and you have these metrics that they can fudge? Fraud. You're going to have we already have lots of evidence in the reports of people they claim they knock on the doors and they didn't. And some of what you guys have just talked about is further evidence of it. So I think there's every possibility that this GOTV effort is a disaster because there is no accountability and the people are not known, and because Elon Musk is a moron.
Yeah. What are we watching here? Is that Jackie Rosen? Can't see. That's from Nevada, Harris Waltz rally. Okay.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
That looks like Cortez Masto.
No, it's Cortez Master. Yeah.
Well.
We are going to have a couple more minutes here until we close out at 10:30. Why don't we take the time to just sort of go around the horn and sort of give our larger thoughts about where we stand, what tomorrow means, your sort of predictions if you want to offer them, your fears if you would like to. I'll start with Andrew.
I'm not going to do any predictions. Coin flip election. Who knows what's going to happen? One thing I've been thinking a lot about is the what comes next of all of this, right? I mean, like whoever wins tomorrow, we've still got this like insane split. We've still got all these people, this whole base of Trumps. And I don't even just mean like the very scary immediate term, like people rejecting the election stuff, but also like there's all these people who have invested all this emotional and spiritual energy in Donald Trump, and they're still going to be around, right? Whether he wins or whether he loses. And he's still going to be around, right? So it's hard to know. It's hard to think about like what the next step is, but you have to imagine that as it was for Biden's, one of the challenges for Harris, if she gets in there, is how to somehow begin to bridge that gap, right? Like somehow start to peel people away from that, or steer people back toward the fold in some way. Or maybe it's not a challenge for Harris. Maybe it's a challenge for whoever the next Senate Majority Leader is. I mean, I don't know. Whoever is making programming decisions on Fox News, or Elon Musk for showing the algorithm on. So I mean, it's such a big, diffuse, dissociated problem. But it's the big problem of the next 4 years. Really, I mean, it's not the single big problem if Trump wins. It's still a big problem. We'll have other bigger problems probably we'll have to deal with. But like, God, I hope when the 2028 election rolls around that we are not all sitting here like with our fingernails chewed down to the nubs, like, oh my Lord, are we in yet another hostage situation with one party that just cannot play ball with the country at all? And maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Mark.
I think the election leans Harris for the reasons I said before. I mean, she just basically has to sweep 3 in these Rust Belt states. There are more Democratic leaning voters. It has more of a history of always voting for Democrats. 2016 was an exception. Hillary Clinton's a rather bad campaign. The executive branches in each one of those 3 states are controlled by Democrats. So I think it leans Harris. It doesn't mean she's going to win. And I read a lot about the Civil War, one of my hobbies. And one of the things that comes across is that Americans wanted to hate each other. And I don't think we're done with that for a while.
Well, on that uplifting note, Will.
Okay, so the upside is, I think that we started this off with Sarah complaining about Josh Shapiro not being on the ticket and what happens in Pennsylvania. Look, if Kamala Harris pulls out Pennsylvania, with Josh Shapiro helping her, even though he's not on the ticket, pulls off Michigan, pulls off Wisconsin, nothing else. And that blue dot in Nebraska brings her home. You know, putting a native Nebraskan on the ticket will turn out to be a masterstroke.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me set that aside. Let me do the pessimistic thing. I don't see how Trump gets less than 46% of the vote in this election. He did. He got 46 the first time, 47 the next. You're talking about, you know, an enormous share of half the country that is still stuck with him after they learned everything, after he attacked the government, tried to overturn an election. And people say, okay, we'll get rid of Trump and there will still be a problem. No, I'm not even sure we're done with Trump. I mean, the guy's, we already beat him. We already did this, right? He lost the election and he came back. And I didn't believe he was going to be the nominee again, and he was. So I don't know what it takes to drive a stake through this guy's heart. If Kamala Harris wins, God bless her. I am thankful. I will breathe a sigh of relief, but I will not believe that Donald Trump is gone. Certainly not his people.
It's like Michael Myers.
AB?
Yeah, he won't be gone. Donald Trump will blame abortion. He will never say he sabotaged the end of his campaign. He will say it's abortion, and that Republicans don't talk about it the right way, or whatever he says. And he'll blame Project 2025, and he'll get mad at Michael Whatley. Is that his name, Mark?
Yep.
Who he keeps saying in public is going to take the blame, and then he's going to blame, and then he's going to, maybe get mad at Elon. But I think that they will do. If Trump loses, so many Republican electeds will be so happy because they want him to lose and they want to move on, but they can't. He will dominate the party, just as JVL has written about. He needs to. It's his business. And he will run again in 2028 if he is still able to walk. As for Harris, they will do everything they can to destroy her. They must, whether that's Senate Majority Leader John Thune, a non-MAGA, secretly, he doesn't like Trump person. The Republican Party will be so broken and so fragile, trying to figure out how to move on from Trump, but sort of fold in part of the populism, but this, but not that. And it will be having such an identity crisis. The only thing that will unite it will be to take her down. And I know that sounds terrible, but they did it to Joe Biden, and he had relationships with them. If anyone was going to be able to do this, it was going to be Joe Biden. And he got a bunch of legislation through Congress, and some of them worked with him anyway. But people who knew him and worked with him and respected him trashed him. Yeah. And she's not going to have a chance with these people. She's not going to have a chance.
Let me close this broadcast. I don't know who is performing up there. Looks very interesting.
Well, the Democratic events are so much more fun than the.
And then can't you just talk about Michigan Man of the Year, whoever that is?
Yeah. Tractors in Mexico. Yeah.
I'm gonna close. First of all, let me do a few programming notes before I close this up. One is thank you all for joining us on this, and for reading us, and for subscribing to us, for helping us build an amazing community. I think objectively, the Bulwark has been, I think someone used the breakout media star of the cycle. And I do believe that firmly. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And you should continue to be with us tomorrow. We're going to be doing, good God, an insane amount of live streaming starting at 7:30 p.m. All of us are going to take our turn. We're going to be there through the night. We're going to have some outside guests. It's open to the public. So if you have people who are not familiar with the Bulwark, tell them to check it out. Tell them to subscribe. We need your subscriptions. And this is where I'm going to get broader and a little bit more sentimental. I was at the Huffington Post in 2016, very liberal outlet. Shocker. And that was when we were in kind of a similar place as we are tonight, except everyone at the Huffington Post was totally convinced that Hillary had it in the bag. I think we had projection up that she had a 99% chance of winning. The next morning, everyone woke up and was shell shocked, and we had a newsroom meeting to figure it out. And people were legitimately sort of figuring out how to process it. It was very difficult for a lot of folks. And in that moment, we sort of talked about how in these trying times, it's imperative that there are institutions, specifically in the world of journalism, that can hold the powerful to account, that can give a voice to the voiceless. And we set out from there on in the Trump years to play that role. And I think the Bulwark is, in the best of senses, a place that has inherited that type of mindset. And regardless of what happens tomorrow, we will continue to play that mindset for the reasons that AB, Will, Mark, and Andrew have all discussed. This is not something that ends with an election. It is part of our lives, and we are committed to playing the role that we think is critical in this moment. So thank you all. Thank you, AB. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate everything. I appreciate the people in the comment section. We will see you tomorrow. Get some rest, hydrate. Take care.